All right. I see everyone straightening up. The moment that almost all of you have been waiting for, the results, the 6 teams that are making to the final round of National Student Challenge 2013. The first team that's making it, hold on, 1 second. Let's take a rewind. Okay, so adding on to what Kavita said, this entire journey of National Student Challenge for us has been largely about getting the perception of different student communities across the country on urban issues and urban challenges. And as I look at the results that are in front of me right now, I can say that the entire country's opinion has been represented in the top 6 teams that are qualifying for the final round. Okay. Before I again declare the results, we would encourage all the teams to stay back till the evening. We have a panel discussion later this evening about how can all of us as budding entrepreneurs combine the 3 important components of entrepreneurship, innovation, sustainability, and entrepreneurship in itself to build a very successful business model. And later this evening, we'll also have the reimbursements in process, so you guys will have to stay back. All right, without much ado, the top 6 teams that have made it to the final round of National Student Challenge 2013. First team, Team Kaizen from VIT Chennai and IIM Madar. The second team is Team Transpose from CEPT University. The third team is Team Padavans from VIMS Bangalore, Amity University Delhi, and University of College London. The fourth team that has made to the final round is Team Unlearn from SJCE Mysore. The fifth team that has made into the final round is Team Amrut Dhara from IIT Madras. And the final team that has made into the final round is Team Infilite from IIT Kharagpur.
Before we go on to the final round, you will not get much time to make any further presentation or add any slides. May I request our director, Aruma Rebi, to introduce the grand jury.
So I guess, folks, the interesting thing here, like I said yesterday, is that this is not a competition. Huh? So there may be some people here who are feeling that, look, we haven't got into the last 6. So what have we been doing for the last few months? The key thing for us is that both you and in some ways we need to celebrate the other 1,000+ teams that participated in this process have probably learned a few new things. And I think that's really important for us. You've hopefully learned about the cities that you live in. You've picked up a few new perspectives. And I suspect, because the mentorship process has been quite intense with some of you, you've also picked up a number of skills. So in some senses, the people who are most privileged here are those that haven't come into the top 6, because they have the opportunity of figuring out what it is that can take them forward and the things that you are not able to put together, which didn't bring you into the 6 that is there. Because I think what we've learned here over time is the most important thing that we have to learn in this country, or the two most important things. The first thing is to implement, right? And this challenge is very different from most other challenges. If you see what all the other newspapers and people do, is that they focus on challenges which are idea-based challenges. The reason that some of us may not have made it into the final 6 is we may have very good ideas, but what the juries have been looking at is whether those ideas can be taken into practice. The fundamental challenge that we have in this country at the moment is that we have lots of good ideas, we debate on television and lots of other places, but it's really difficult to translate those things into practical solutions on the ground. Now, in order to do that, there's something that we need to build a sort of an important culture of, and that is a culture of understanding and being tolerant of and learning from our failures. The greatest innovators in history are people who have learned how to fail most effectively. That's why I said the other teams that didn't make it to the 6 if they're able to reflect on what they've learned and what they haven't learned and where they could do things further, may in real life, because most of you are going to go into real life in the next few months or years, they may actually do much better than those that are privileged to maybe get the support that we might be willing to give them. So those things are, I think, very important for us to understand. The first thing is, if you have to make a difference in the world, both for yourself and anybody else, you do have to focus on making things happen. Implementation is the most serious challenge this country has. We have tremendously talented people, we have a wealth of resources, we even now have a rising national income, so things are a little bit better. But what we don't have, and that's where countries like China and Japan and other parts of the world, even Latin America are much better off, is actually implementing things on the ground. And implementing things in cities is actually quite complex and very difficult to do. Why? Because cities are the most complex systems that we have evolved over the last 5,000 years. So in some senses, if you find that you're challenged, it's not because, it's because you don't know what you're doing or you haven't tried hard enough. It is because for 5,000 years, we have still not learned how to manage our urban environments. And I'm not only talking about our country, because we stand outside and we say the garbage has not been cleared, or the water doesn't run, or the transport gets clogged, etc. It is because urban systems are exceedingly complex. They're embedded within ecological systems. Ecological systems across the world are under considerable stress. They're inhabited with people who have lots of different ideas and who are continually contesting each other, sometimes nicely and otherwise. So they're very complex processes that we don't actually understand how to deal with adequately. So people would say, okay, we want to make Bombay like Singapore and Bangalore like Shanghai. Those are in some senses a false comparison, because these are ideas which may not actually work in our circumstance. And both Singapore and Shanghai have serious challenges that are embedded in the way that they're doing doing things. So I think it's been interesting, certainly for us. It's been a learning journey for my colleagues coming through this, and also for yourselves to be able to understand that we have set you one of the most difficult challenges that people who are going to be alive for the next 20 or 30 years, certainly your generation, maybe the generation after you, are going to be dealing with. This is a non-trivial set of challenges. This is as difficult in some senses as the people who work on pure sciences and work on genetics, the guys who are able to crack the DNA code at some point of time, the people who allowed us to fly. We take flying for granted, but flying is something that happened only 100 years ago. So this is a very complex field, and in order to understand how you can make a difference in it, you not only have to understand how specific things work. How do I, improve the healthcare system in the city, or how do I improve the food system in the city? I believe there were some pizzas that were being sold here yesterday, etc. But how they all come together. The thing about complex systems are, the parts of the system interact with each other. And you cannot break it down into small parts and deal with everything in silos, because the interactions are quite intense, and in a country like ours where things are growing very quickly, in which cities are growing very quickly, the interaction is even more complicated. So what we are trying to do here is to train and educate a new generation of professionals who can actually deal with that complexity, people who are comfortable with dealing with that, which means, of course, at least two things. It means that you must understand the underlying concepts and the canons of the disciplines that underpin that. So normally when we think of cities, we think of engineering and we think of management, but there are a whole range of other disciplines that are very important. Economics, for example, is a very critical discipline. Law is a very important discipline to be able to understand how systems are managed and governed. So that's one part of it. You need to have the understanding of how the principles that drive this thing work. And the second thing is, you have to know how they translate and operationalize themselves in practice with citizens, because cities are about citizens, and we often forget that. And sometimes we've lost our way in this, even in this discussion. With institutions in which those citizens are embedded, because we have an active democracy. It's not like another country. The embedment of the citizens and institutions is very, very important. And we are having a serious challenge at the moment in the country, because most of the institutions that we built over the last 50 or 60 years were built with a different imagination. They were built with an imagination of a country that was different, and it has changed. And you're the proof of that in some senses. So rebuilding the institutions that we have in the imagination of a different India, one that is significantly urban, will require tremendous innovation. We will have to try and build things. Many of them will crash and burn. So citizens first, institutions later. And institutions are not only public institutions, they're also in the private sector, in civil society, and getting them to to work together. So one is to understand not only the theory, what the disciplines do, but how they're applied in practice. And the challenge that we have in India today is we do not have a theory of how these cities work. So my colleagues here, many of them here and upstairs and various other places, are trying to understand what those theories actually may be like. But those theories are not built in the abstract, they're not in our heads. We test them in real life. So those of you, and I guess there will be people who've come in from the previous challenges, when you go out and try and test them in real life, you find that a lot of what we learn, especially stuff that we learn from the West, does not apply to our circumstance. Which means that you have to become theory builders in your own right, but that theory is based on a practice that is real in our circumstance. So, non-trivial problem. Complex problem in the first place. We don't actually have good theory for it, both inside this country and outside. And, most of you are students, so you're engaged with theory and books and stuff like that. But the theory only works if it can be applied in practice. So if it doesn't work, you have to build new theory. Fine? And I think and the question of building theory through practice is a fundamental and challenging question. And we have to build new kinds of institutions and new ways of learning to make that happen. And in that, to close what I was saying, failure is really important. Because it's only through failure that you can test a theory. Fine? You have an idea, and then you try and do it, and it doesn't work. So you have to get up, dust your backside off, and say, okay, I'm going to try again and try and make it better, try and make it different, and see how it works. But in that process, you always have to reflect on what you wanted to get to and how you're doing it. So we're talking about a new style of problem solving, where you need to have the theory, you need to try and apply it, but you need to be reflective to learn what it was that you didn't do adequately. And this is something that we often don't learn in our educational institutions. But that's what life is all about. And that's how we're going to become, I think, an effective and, in a sense, a great nation, by being able to do that. To learn how to fail. And maybe, your parents' generation, certainly mine, were always afraid of failure. But the generation before that, who brought us independence, were not afraid of failure. They had nothing to lose. They had to sort of lose their shackles in some senses. So I think we have to recreate that context. And we're going to rebuild India maybe 60 years after we started, after having made lots of mistakes. And we hope you guys are going to try and do that. I know some of you are going to run off to the States and to Europe and to the, wherever it is. But for many of us who circulate internationally, this is the most interesting place, and so is China and East Asia, where most of the most remarkable innovation is going to be actually operationalized over the next 20 or 30 years. So go out, do your stuff, but eventually if you really want to do something that's interesting with your life, this is the place where it will happen. Because this is where we've got all the most remarkable problems of the world, and this is the place where we have some of the greatest innovators, and we hope that some of you are actually going to go out and do that stuff. So 20 years from now when we talk and we meet, maybe some of you will say, oh well, we got this mad idea. We didn't come through on this, but we went over and then we decided to find our passion and do something concrete. So in that spirit, I think we have three very remarkable people here. And I think it's interesting. All of them have done remarkable things in practice, but they also have contributed a lot to the way that we're reframing how, in a sense, theory is built. So very quickly, on my, I guess, right, the first person is Sanjay Prakash. Sanjay is one of India's leading sort of sustainability practitioners in the area of the built environment. He has 35 years now, almost, of he's young enough to not remember, but he's got 35 years of practice in this space. And I think for those of you who are nerds, he holds a record which nobody's ever broken. I'm telling you, he's a little embarrassed at the moment. He holds a record, an academic record, which nobody's broken, because the examination that he topped in the 70s has been shut down. But basically, so when he topped the higher secondary examination in 75, yeah, okay, so that's a long time back. Now you can make the calculations. The guy who came second was 10 percentage points behind him. Okay, so today, of course, getting 90% is like really bad scene, because you can't get into most places in this country. But at that point of time, high performance was getting whatever 83 or 85 or something like that. So you were in the top 1 percentile if you got it. But this guy sort of went on and got 90% and did various things. So he could have gone into any place in the country, including the IITs. They all came to talk to him and do whatever it is. But he chose to go into the design space, and has been doing remarkable work for the last 35 years in really interesting things. So for example, for a while, the largest earth dome in the world, which was built in India incidentally, it still exists on Rajpath. It's the only building in earth that sits on Rajpath at the moment, was designed and built by him. If you want to go there, you can see it. It's 25 years old. When it was built, there was no SPG at that time, but people were very worried because Rajiv Gandhi came to open the building, that whether it will fall on his head and sort of will be one of the tools to do him in, etc. But that building still stands. But more than that, more interestingly, Sanjay about 2 years ago, built the largest bamboo dome in the world, and he did it in the most interesting place at the Shanghai Exposition in Shanghai. So that was India's entry into the Shanghai Exposition, and it was a fascinating process because they had to meet all the Chinese codal standards. They had a team that came together from across the world, but it was a remarkable building because it not only spanned how many meters? 35 meters. That's a lot. To demonstrate what new technologies could be like. So it was entirely organic. It also had a wonderful covering where you grew about 2 lakh plants on the top. Oh, I don't know, something of that order. Yeah, medicinal herbs on the top, which actually made a wonderful pattern. So it was a living building, one of the first living buildings of its kind that were actually built, and it was one of the toasts of the Shanghai Exposition. So that's just to give you an idea of the stuff that he's done. He's also been an animator, filmmaker, and all kinds of other mad things. But he has a really good understanding of design, has trained and educated maybe a few hundred people in integrative, interdisciplinary design over the last 30-40 years. So that's and of course, like many other people, he's educated a whole range of people. Then we have Jessica Seddon. Jessica has been sort of a very important part of the IHS process over the last couple of years, 3 years. She helped us build our research program. She, again, interestingly, has a very mixed background. All of us here are mongrels. We come from many different shapes and sizes. So she was educated first at Harvard, and then she went off to the West Coast and got a PhD in a business school, unnamed. But her primary work is really in trying to shift the boundaries of knowledge in information systems, in the application of the understanding of how public policy and institutions come together. Now, these may seem like esoteric things, but Jessica is an American who is actually more from Chennai than many of us. She spent many years in this country trying to understand, and if you look at the work that she's done in terms of writing, she's written more about the Indian economy than many Indian economists, has a great understanding of how institutions and processes actually work in this country, including how things happen both over the table and under the table. And if you can write papers about that, you're pretty skilled at doing stuff. She also works a lot in the last year or so on entrepreneurship and trying to see both in rural and urban areas of how entrepreneurship can actually be implemented. I mean, how entrepreneurial ideas can be implemented with Okapi, the firm that she runs. And if any of you come here at some point of time, she's one of the star sort of learners here, because our educators learn as much as people who come in to sort of learn from them in some ways. She also does a lot of work on environmental questions, especially on climate change, and a range of other issues related to the atmosphere and pollution and things like that. So basically what you'd find for people who come through this process here is that they actually cut across a whole range of fields, because when you have a problem, you have to try and solve it in whatever ways you can. And then finally, Rohini Nilekani. So I guess everybody sort of knows her by name and by reputation. As a professional, I guess she was at one time a media professional, but at the moment, I would say your profession is provoking people to think about really difficult questions and trying to solve them. Because among other things, she runs one of the more active and thought-provoking philanthropies in this country. And I guess one of the big challenges that Rohini is trying to do is to try and take people who have a certain amount of wealth which has been built, maybe in their generation or generation before that, and apply it to problems which neither the government nor the private sector is willing to get into. So dealing with problems that are really difficult to deal with, which people don't have guts to go into, and supporting people who are willing to go out and take those challenges, put their life on the line in some senses and go and implement them. So she chairs a non-governmental agency, a foundation called Aragram, that's done some of the most innovative work on water supply and sanitation in the country. She understands the urban sector and the rural sector very well, has traveled extensively, and in some of the ideas that you have, as much as she challenges some of the leading political lights, private sector leaders, and other entrepreneurs in the country. So you can expect some googlies and dusras from her. So that's your panel that's going to sort of sit and reflect on your process. And I'll hand things over to them, and I think we're going to have an interesting time. Like I said in the beginning, the challenge here is not to win, the challenge is to challenge yourself to see whether you can actually go forward. It might seem like some spin to people, but in the long run, the great innovators of the world are all about being able to challenge yourself to do things differently, to do things better, and to find what your life is really about. Because if you find that, then the rest of it doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't matter. What you learned, what your family background is, which town you came from, it doesn't matter. So I'll sort of leave things there, and then let's get going. You guys are going to take over.